Coming up here on today's show, I break down a bunch of blockbuster trades. This video that I recorded, though, was from Thursday. That doesn't feature the Andre James news that it is the Las Vegas Raiders are planning on moving on from him. The trade that you're about to see in this video isn't exactly what the value would be. Now the value would be a 2026 7th-round pick, but I still predicted that my thought is that he would end up going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So coming up here, blockbuster trades, but you're still going to see why I think the Raiders could have traded Andre James. Who else misses Blockbuster? I know I do. So coming up here on today's show, we're going to talk about some blockbuster trades that the Raiders could pull off during NFL free agency. I'm going to discuss players that the Raiders could trade away, like you'll see here in a little bit. I'm also going to talk about some players that the Raiders could trade for. On top of that, the players that the Raiders could trade away, I'm going to tell you who some other teams could be in terms of potential landing spots. I'm also going to give you a trade for every single player that you see here on today's show. And every trade that you're going to see is one that I've never shown before on the Raiders Report. If you want to hang out with Jeremy Chuggs and I every single day next week, we will be live every day here on the Raiders Report. And when breaking news happens, we're already probably going to be live. If you want to hang out with us for 30-plus hours next week, make sure you subscribe. Make sure those notifications are turned on. I think we're going live on Monday at like 10 o'clock our time. So 11 a.m. Eastern. Be ready for y'all on the West Coast. A lot of Jeremy Chuggs and I next week. Let's go to the first name here on the list that I think the Raiders could potentially trade away, and it's Andre James. JPJ, he's going to be the center of the future, and let's be real, James struggled a little bit last season. He did improve from 2019 to 2023, and trading him saves the Raiders $5.3 million. You eat only $3.4. There are going to be some teams out there that are going to be looking for some potential centers, and anytime that you can find an offensive line that at least gives you a little bit of flexibility, there will be teams that are interested. To me, if you were to ask me, Mitch, who are some teams that could be interested in Andre James, I would say the Jacksonville Jaguars, Indianapolis Colts, Green Bay Packers, Atlanta Falcons, Panthers, any team that is looking for a center. But to me, there was some news that happened at the time that I'm recording this video on March 6th that Jacksonville's number one center, Mitchell Morse, he retired earlier today. So what happens if Jacksonville, who right now is trying to move around some players, they're trying to save some money, could they potentially go out and get a starting center in Andre James? And I would say all it would cost is a 5th-round pick. If right now, and every trade that you see on today's show is a trade that I would do. So right now, I would say 5th-round pick for Andre James. That's good enough for me because I don't think he's going to start on this team anyway. Let's go to another player here that I could see potentially being dealt. It is Michael Mayer. Brock Bowers is the Raiders' tight end one of the future. There's been reports out there that the Raiders are shopping him, that the teams are calling, and multiple teams are interested. For the Raiders, though, if you move on from Mayer, you save barely anything, and you eat $1.9 million. Depending on if the Raiders are actually shopping Mayer and they're saying, hey, we'll let you go out the door, I really think it's only going to cost like a 6th-round pick in order to get that deal done. If the Raiders aren't interested in trading him, then that deal is going to be a lot lower. Some teams that I could see being interested in Mayer, Jags on here as well, because when I first designed this show, I did not know that Jacksonville was going to do everything that they did, and they just released Evan Ingram at the time that I'm recording this bad boy. So I could see the Jets, the Patriots, especially New England. You're going to see New England on here a lot because Josh McDaniels, that regime, there's a lot of players that are from that regime that we could potentially be moving on from. The Titans also are going to be on here a lot because of Dave Ziegler, and that's a team that it sounds like they want to add a lot of young pieces and add a little bit more draft capital. So you know what? I said this. The Tennessee Titans, they pull off a deal. Dave Ziegler says, we need a tight end. We need a good tight end too. And here's the deal that ends up going down. The Raiders get a 4th-round pick, 102. This is actually the very first pick of the very first pick of the 4th round. In return, the Titans get a 6th-round pick, the final pick in the 6th round, which Tennessee doesn't have any 6th-round picks, I believe. And then also, they get Michael Mayer. I'm always curious to see what you guys have to say about all these trades, and you're going to see a lot of them here on today's show. So please go down to the comments and give me some yeses. And if you want me to know which trade you're talking about, just put whatever the title is. So Mayer trade idea, let me know what you're thinking down below. How about this? This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. And I love that we always talk about trades. And yet, trades are, something that doesn't happen all the time. So predict it, look into your crystal balls. How many trades will the Raiders make before the NFL draft? I'm going to be looking. My answer coming up here in just a moment. The special number I'm going to go with is I'm going to go with 3. I could see the Raiders doing 3 trades, and I'm not saying that they're all going to be blockbuster deals. Typically, trades are under the radar type of trades. And we'll talk about some more players here that could end up going down. But the magic number I'm going to go with, just because it feels good, 3 feels like a good amount of trades that could end up going down. Let's go to another player here that could be dealt away. I'll be real. I don't know how many teams would actually be interested in Jack Jones, considering the fact that they would have to pay him $3.3 million. But he is in the final year of his contract, 42 games played, and might not be the best fit with this new regime. This has been something that I've talked about before where, Pete Carroll's going to want a certain type of corner. That's not Jack Jones. There's also a team that we don't want to have any divas, drama on. That's not really Jack Jones. Jones without Antonio Pierce has not been good throughout his career. I'll admit, we need depth at corner. And if we're just desperate for a corner, then you probably just hang on to him. You pay him. It is what it is. But I could see the Raiders be willing to give up Jack Jones for, not a lot at all. The teams that you're about to see do need cornerback help. And these are teams that are looking for a solid cornerback 2, cornerback 3, which I don't really know if Jack is a corner 2 or corner 3. For the sake of this video, I'm going to call him a cornerback 2 so we get at least a little bit more value. The team that I would say right now is the most likely to trade for him would be the person that has the biggest connection with Jack Jones. And I'm just going to say the Pittsburgh Steelers because Gerald Alexander, the Raiders safety coach last season, went back to Pittsburgh. So out of all those teams, out of all the coaches, he's probably the only one that at least kind of knows what you're going to be able to get with Jack, but it's not going to cost a lot. 2026 7th round pick. If I was the Raiders, I would take this trade to be able to save the 3.3 and move on from Jones. Let's go to another player here that I could see the Raiders potentially moving on from this offseason, and it's Thayer Munford. Munford is also in the final year of his contract in 2025. For a new regime, if you don't believe that you're going to bring back some of these players, you just trade them now, and you just get whatever you absolutely can get out of them. Because Carroll and Spytek, Munford's third regime, which kind of sucks when he first got drafted in the 7th round by Dave Ziegler, by Josh McDaniels. I actually was hoping that Munford could be a little bit better. He really struggled at the end of last season, but there would be teams interested in Munford. He's an Ohio State product. Many years ago, and I say many, back in 2022 area, he could have been a first-round pick, and a lot of people thought that he was going to be a first-round pick coming out of Ohio State. The teams that I would say would be the most interested in Munford are the top 3 teams that you're about to see here on screen. New England, because Josh McDaniels drafted him. Titans, because Dave Ziegler ended up drafting him. The New York Giants, because the first 2 years that Munford was in the league, Carmen Brasillo, the Raiders' old offensive line coach, was a big part of, I thought, Munford looking a lot better. And if I was Munford, I'd want to go play with the New York Giants overall because I think the Giants are a intriguing team, no doubt about it, but I think that's right, actually. Oh, I was going to say, I didn't realize what it said. Sorry, Chuck's talking to me in my ear. So the trade that ends up going down here, and we're going to be a little bit different. I tried to throw a bunch of different trade ideas out at you just simply because it's boring to just show the same thing over and over and over again. So the deal that I have here is the New York Giants. Thayer Munford goes to New York, and also they get a 7th-round pick 224. The Raiders get a 5th-round pick in 2026. So the Giants didn't have a 6th-round pick, I believe. So because of that, we couldn't get a 6th-rounder in return. And typically, when you give a pick the following year, it's considered a 2026 5th, I would say, is considered by NFL teams a 2025 6th-round pick. Hopefully, that makes a little bit of sense there. But let me know what you think of that one. This one is going to upset some people just because it's Aidan O'Connell. But if the Raiders sign a quarterback and draft a QB, then that could potentially make AOC the quarterback 3. I know that Pete Carroll wants to be able to add quarterbacks to this room to create competition, and Aidan's been working this offseason with Tom Brady, and I'm not sitting up here just saying that I want to trade Aidan. That's not the case at all. If anything, I'm trying to take advantage of the value that Aidan has, because I really believe right now is the highest that Aidan O'Connell's trade value is probably ever going to be. First 2 years, played 20 games, had 17 starts underneath his belt, and I love the report by Mike Dixon that's saying, hey, Aidan O'Connell's been working with Tom Brady. That's going to drive up his value a little bit. But I think Aidan's too good to be a quarterback 3. And if I am saying that he's too good to be a quarterback 3, I just want to take advantage of the value because there will be teams picking up the phone and calling the Raiders about AOC. And the team that's going to do it, I'm telling you right now, is the New England Patriots. Dave Ziegler was a part of that regime. Miami needs a solid backup quarterback behind Tua Tagovailoa. The New York Jets, they don't really know what their quarterback situation is going to be. Could be a backup there. And then also Jacksonville, they're looking for a backup behind Trevor Lawrence, and that could be another regime that goes out and looks at them. Plus, we have the Liam Cohen connection to be able to get that call done. But let's be real. If Aidan O'Connell gets traded this offseason, I'm going to say it's to the New England Patriots. And there's going to be a lot of people that want me to put Joe Milton in this trade. I actually think Aidan is better than Joe Milton. I will admit Milton has higher upside, but if you were to tell me right now which quarterback would I want on my team to help me win football games in the future, I would say Aidan O'Connell is a better quarterback than Joe Milton. But I would say that New England could potentially give up a 5th-round pick. You could pick 145, and you send Aidan to go be a backup in New England with Josh McDaniels. Coming up here, though, this is where it's going to get fun, this is where I would say Blockbuster is about to hit. Coming up, the players that the Raiders could potentially trade for, which is probably why a lot of y'all wanted to tune in to today's show to begin with. Before I get into all of that, I know that a lot of times on this show, especially when trades go down, it turns into a shit show. Here's the thing. I don't want your bathroom to be a shit show. So shout out to our sponsor here, Tushy. March Madness is a sacred time of yelling at the TV. Also, free agency. Sacred time yelling at the TV, maybe the Raiders report. While deleting a few beers, crushing some Zaw, there's no doubt your bracket's going to bust this month. That doesn't mean your butthole has to as well. Aura is Tushy's brand new electric bidet with an auto-open lid and see instant warm water that never runs cold and UV sterilization for next level hygiene. Aura by Tushy easily attaches to your existing toilet without the need for additional plumbing. Installation is simple, takes about 10 minutes to complete. Literally anyone can do it. It's easy to install but easier to use. Sit, cleanse, and dry using the built-in air dryer. That's right. Cleaning yourself after using the bathroom is now hands-free. Reclaim your comfort zone in the bathroom. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code CHAT at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code CHAT. I'll be real with you. I was always a little bit afraid to use a bidet, and then I used one for the first time. I'll be real. I don't know why they're not in every single home. I mean, shit is dope, man. I mean, it's a game changer. I'll tell you this. It's not a great water fountain, but it is a great way to clean your behind. And I love the fact that they're sponsoring the Raiders Report. So please use code CHAT at hellotushy.com/chat. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Let's go to some players that the Raiders could potentially trade for it if they did. Anytime a trade happens, we turn this show into a shit show. Shout out to Hello Tushy for sponsoring. We're going to first talk about Evan Neal. He is an offensive tackle for the New York Giants, and Neal is in the final year of his contract, and the Giants are a team that they need to win this season. This is going to be an organization that I think goes all in to try to win right now, because if they don't, their GM, their head coach is going to be gone. And I do think that he's a much better run blocker, and he could be put at offensive guard. You might be able to keep him at right tackle if you want to put him in there for competition with DJ Glaze. But I'll be real. I think Evan Neal could be an interesting offensive lineman, where Chugs brought up a very interesting point during our live show. Look at a team like the Chicago Bears. They go out, they make 2 different trades to help their offensive line. There's been some reports, there's been some speculation that offensive linemen could be getting a lot more money on the open market and free agency. And if you're the Raiders and you're a little bit worried about that, it's only going to cost you $1.1 million in 2025. You could potentially give him a new deal, but this was a player that, I'll be real, I can't believe he's been bad. And he's been really, really bad on the New York Giants. He's a gigantic human being, and I would treat Evan Neal the way that the Philadelphia Eagles treat a Mekhi Becton. If you're not athletic enough to be a tackle, you are a humongous dude. Can I put you at guard? Can we be physical? And can we go from there? And you already know the Giants aren't going to keep him. He's a backup right now behind Jermaine Illuminor. It's not going to cost a lot. So because I know it's not going to cost a lot, let's give up a 6th-round pick which is pick 214 for the Raiders, and you get Evan Neal, somebody that was drafted, I believe, number 5 overall or number 7 overall just a few years ago from the University of Alabama. And I know Alabama offensive linemen scare people here, but I think this is a decent deal. Let's go to another name here that is on the market, and it's Greg Newsome II. The Raiders are looking to add a cornerback this offseason. The fact that Newsome is in the final year of his deal with the Browns, he is coming off his career worst year. But I do think that there needs to be something said of when you're in a dumpster fire of an organization, and if you're a Browns player and you're looking at everything going on right now with Deshaun Watson, it's probably unmotivating to be there every single day. Cleveland, they're going to be sellers this offseason, and if the Raiders were to trade for him, it's only going to cost you $13.4 million in 2025, but this is a round one type of talent, and this is somebody, when healthy, is a legit corner in the NFL. Like, this is a legit cornerback one in the league. Still pretty young, but if I told you it's $13.4 million this year, and then you could give him an extra deal, like, you're looking at some guys out there that are getting $15, $16, $17 million per year, and since it's not going to cost you a lot, you could look at the Raiders and say, this is a cheaper route than signing somebody in free agency. Yes, you have to give up a draft pick, but still, he's a young, lanky corner that is a great fit, I think, of what Pete Carroll is ultimately looking for. But I would say go back and watch his tape in 2023. Go back and watch his tape in 2022, because there was a lot of people who thought that Greg Newsome was one of the better corners in the league in 2023. So I reached out to our Brown source here at Chat Sports, and I said, how much? And he said if you're willing to take on his contract, 5th-round pick is what he would want, which the Browns get pick 144. The Raiders get a legit number 1 corner. And even if he's not a legit number 1 to some people, I would say Greg Newsome at corner would be the same confidence level that you should have as Jacoby Myers being a wide receiver. Maybe not a great one, but a really good number 2. Shout out to Tushy. Let's go to another name here at the cornerback spot. And this is somebody, again, you could potentially buy low on. When he was first coming out of college, I loved Jaycee Horn. And my objective of doing this show is, I know the Raiders want to add a corner. If you got to pay somebody on the open market 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 million dollars, whatever the hell it's going to cost you, or you give up a lower draft pick, you pay somebody a lower value, and then you have a super talented player on your team. Injuries are the number 1 concern here with Horn. Coming off a career year, which is why I like it, but he did miss 31 games in his first 4 years, which is an ugly, ugly situation. But turn on the tape with Horn. You saw this year that Horn, when he was drafted, I think he was drafted like top 10, number 8 overall, I want to say, by Carolina. When you saw him first coming out, people were like, this guy's a difference maker. And I actually remember Jaycee Horn was getting some comps to Richard Sherman when he was first coming out from, was it South Carolina? Yeah, South Carolina. But 68 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 13 PBUs. He can do it all. And the fact that he can do it all is why I'm intrigued by this one. So I wanted to get a little bit different here. I wanted to throw together a different trade idea. Here's the trade that I put. The Panthers, they receive pick number 68. In return, the Raiders get Jaycee Horn, and you get a 5th-round pick. Carolina's not going to get that much for Horn, who is a good player, but if Carolina wanted them, they would just, pick up his 5th-year option, or they would just go out and extend him. If that doesn't happen, he's going to be on the open market, which means he's not going to cost nearly as much as what some people could potentially think it ends up costing. Let's go to another player here that's been getting a lot of rumors around him. It's Brandon Ayuk, and there's reports out that the 49ers would trade Ayuk to just about anybody. Some people might say, no, I don't want Ayuk. It's going to cost too much. Look at the contract again. If the Raiders were to trade for Brandon Ayuk, it would cost them $1.2 million in 2025. And the fact that he's got $0 million guaranteed in 2026, 2027, and 2028, if all it costs you is a 2nd or 3rd, I know I don't want any divas, but a player that has put up the numbers that Brandon Ayuk has at $1.2 million, and it's essentially a prove-it deal. I saw what Brandon Ayuk looked like last year. He looked like he was fat, he was out of shape, and he didn't care. If he ends up getting traded and he's making technically only $1.2 million with 0 guaranteed, that's going to be an eye-opening experience for Ayuk, and I think it's going to wake him up a little bit, and I think you're going to get a much better version of number 11. So if it costs you pick 73, if you told me right now we traded Devontae Adams for Brandon Ayuk last season, I would have said, great job, Raiders. You got younger, and maybe you even got a little bit better. So because of that, This is the deal that I'm going to put forth on the table. Though, the craziest trade I'm about to show you is going to be this one. DK Metcalf. And we know Metcalf's got a great relationship with Pete Carroll. If the Raiders go out and trade for him, you're going to have to give him a brand new deal, probably somewhere in that $27 to $30 million range. But Seattle apparently wants a first and a third. They're not going to get a first and third. When you listen to all the reports out there, nobody's going to give them a first and a third. But you know what? I wanted to do it differently because the amount of DK Metcalf trades I've done on this show, I said to myself, how can I do it a little bit different? And I said, okay, if Seattle wants a first-round pick, I'm going to give them a first-round pick. Now, the only way that I see the Seahawks doing the trade that I'm about to show you is if they legitimately don't want to pay a receiver and they want to go out and draft T-Mac. If they don't want to draft T-Mac, I don't see why on hell that they would do this trade. But if Seattle wants a first-round pick, I go, all right, let's swap first. Pick 6, pick 18. According to the trade value chart, if this trade were to end up going down, Seattle would have to give up a second and a third-round pick to go from 6 or go from 18 all the way up to 6. So by this value, by that logic, because we are swapping first-round picks, the Raiders get DK Metcalf for essentially a second-round pick, and you're also going to give me pick 82, which is a third-rounder. If Seattle don't want T-Mac, I don't see why the hell that they would ever do this deal. But if you want to be able to keep great receivers because you lost Tyler Lockett, you lost DK Metcalf, and you still want maybe the best receiver in the draft, but you're going to be able to get him on a rookie deal, then this would be the reason why Seattle would want to do it. I'm telling you this right now, and I know it's maybe not a popular opinion to trade back in the first round to everybody. I would do this trade in a heartbeat. I don't think Seattle does, but this shows the Raiders report, and this would be a lot of fun to me. This would be outstanding. So name a player you want the Raiders to potentially trade for. Let me know down below. I'm curious what you got to say. Out of all the names that I brought up, the one that I think actually might make the most sense, either Greg Newsome or Jaycee Horn. Good value there. But DK would be the one that I think would go the most crazy on this show.